Hey, you random stranger. So this is it. This is the very last episode of Bloom Into You. Touko is still spiraling into her identity crisis, and Yuu has just made a decision to try and pull her out of it by changing the ending of the student council play. Now, will it work? I have no idea. I think it would be a real downer if it didn't, but we shall see. Whatever happens, I have loved every moment of watching this very messy, very complicated show, and I've loved reading your guys' insights into it. In fact, I do feel like some of you should write like literary guides on Bloom Into You, given the amount and the depth of the detail that you guys pick up on. Which adds just so much more to the show. So thank you so much for gifting that to me. We should probably start this last recap with the conversation right at the end of episode 10 when Touko mentioned having these dreams about the past, the kind where, you know, you're reliving some kind of childhood memory. But I think Sayaka's reframing of that was a lot more perceptive and I think a lot more closer to the truth. She basically said, no, Touko, you're not actually dreaming about the past. You're dreaming about the fact that you can't stop thinking about the past. And that's a key distinction. It was this recognition that Toko's waking moments are so saturated with thoughts of the past that even her dreams have become about the act of remembering itself. So she's not haunted by the past. She is instead haunted by her own inability to stop haunting herself, if that makes any sense. I guess you could say she's trapped in this loop where remembering has become her default way of existing. In other words, she has completely lost the ability to be in the present. It reminded me of something that Proust wrote over a century ago now. So he distinguished between two different types of memory. There's voluntary memory, where you consciously try to remember something, and involuntary memory, like when a smell suddenly transports you back in time. And he has this really famous passage where he wrote about tasting and sort of smelling this Madeleine cake, which triggers the involuntary and very vivid flood of memories. How this relates to Touko is when Proust argued that voluntary memory is essentially fake. So he wrote, it's a memory of the intelligence and the eyes, which only gives you faces of the past without truth. So when you're constantly, consciously trying to remember the past, you're not actually accessing the real essence of those experiences, but you're really just getting a very sanitized, inauthentic version. Touko is basically stuck in voluntary memory mode, constantly obsessively dwelling on Estes' memory and trying to live out what she thinks are authentic memories of her when they're really not. And ironically, the harder that she clings to the past, the more the real memories slip away. Will she or won't she break the cycle? I am fully prepared to not really find the answer, even in the episode that we have left, because in the comments, people have mentioned that the anime remains unfinished, but the manga is out there, as are the light novels, so I will definitely be checking them out. So the student council play becomes this metaphor for Toko's struggle. It's the story of this empty girl who loses a memory and has to figure out who she is based on what others tell her. So her friend thinks that she's always happy and friendly. Her younger brother thinks she's very distant, and her lover tells her that she's vulnerable and always needed a shoulder to cry on, which sounds so familiar, right? It's basically how Touko presents herself to her friends at school and then her family at home, and then I guess to you. The girl desperately wants to go back to being herself, but she's lost because all of these versions of herself are so different to each other. And as she puts it, I have to become one of them or else I'll have nothing left. So she tries acting out each version, hoping it will somehow unlock her memories and reveal to her who she really is. In Koyomi's original script, the girl ultimately chooses to become the person she was with her lover, you know, theoretically because that's who she was most comfortable being, I guess being her supposed true self. And also this is someone who accepts them, quote unquote, for who they are. But there is also something not quite right about that either, because showing weakness doesn't necessarily mean showing your real self. You know, maybe she knew on some level that the other person felt good when she exposed her vulnerable side to them. So maybe even that was a performance to some extent. What makes this girl and also Touko's situation so tragic is that she's trying to solve the problem of identity by picking one version and sticking to that. And at one point, she, or rather her character, says that she's hardly a person, which is kind of heartbreaking. Maybe Toko is so allergic to the idea of different versions of herself because to her, if there's no one solid, unchanging core to who she is, then maybe she really is just an empty shell putting on different performances for different people. For someone who is so convinced that she has no authentic self, the idea of embracing multiplicity feels like admitting to being a fundamentally hollow person. But that's not really how human beings work, is it? I mean, at least I don't think that is. You know, to some extent, we act differently with different people, and that's okay. Like, that's not being fake, that's just kind of being human. I think T.F. Sharma did a great write up on this seeming dilemma that Toko has. They wrote, I'd argue there's no such thing as a single essential true self. That is not to say the concept is meaningless, just that seeing a person as one indivisible, static being doesn't work. And I 100% agree. In my view, who someone is depends not only on their own self-image, which is always imperfect, but also on how others see them. Those external perceptions, even more flawed, shape expectations that influence a person's behavior, often without them even realizing it. But a person isn't just the sum of all these models. They're also shaped by the mental models they form of all the people they know, representations they understand, store, and carry in their mind to navigate relationships and situations. And then, and this is super interesting, there are the versions of themselves they already could be given the right context, the unrealized, hypothetical selves they are still capable of being. The fact that someone could react a certain way in a situation that never happened is still part of who they are. People can always surprise others and even themselves, and that too is part of their identity. And with each new experience and interaction, they gradually change. Hopefully that made sense to someone. It made total sense, and I am in 100% agreement. You know, I just feel like that was a way more refined way to express basically how I feel too about how we think about our identity and what it's made up of. So to me, kind of like you. Yeah, it is odd thinking you have to pick someone's idea of you and then stick to that forever, because I have always just accepted that people change constantly and different aspects of yourself come out more with certain people. Like, you probably act differently around your parents than you do with your best friend or your colleagues or your romantic partner. All of those relationships shape you in different ways that can all be authentically you. And like T.F. Sharman pointed out, there are also all of the future potential yous that form part of the complex composition that is you. But then again, you know, I haven't suffered something as traumatic as Toko has. So I think the key difference is that healthy or healthier people have a sense of continuity threading through all of those different versions of themselves. There's usually some core sense of this is still me, even when we adapt to different social contexts. But Toko, she, due to all the trauma that she underwent as a child, has lost that thread entirely. To her, every variation of herself is proof that she's just an empty vessel reflecting whatever others want to see. And then came the bombshell that changed everything. Like, this was an event that blew my mind, even though I probably should have seen it coming. So Ichigaya, who used to be on the student council with Mio, revealed the truth about her. The fact that she wasn't this hardworking, competent, morally upright person that Toko remembers her as. She took credit for others' work. She wasn't particularly academically inclined, and honestly, she kind of sounds like a mess of a person. What is interesting though is that despite all those flaws, people still liked her. She clearly had some sort of charisma that covered over all those sins, and there was something genuinely admirable about her, even if it wasn't what Toko thought it was. Another cruel irony is that Ichigaya told Toko that she's actually way more impressive than Mio ever was, as a student council president, at least. So imagine spending just years of your life and of your mental space trying to become someone, sacrificing your own identity in the process, never allowing yourself to be at ease with anyone in your life, only to discover that the person you were trying to become wasn't even all that. It shatters Toko. You know, if Mio wasn't who she thought she was, then who has Toko been this whole entire time? There is another way to look at this that Growl Mouse very astutely pointed out. Mio and Toko are, in one sense, very much alike. You know, they are both capable of controlling others and keeping a perfect facade. And now Toko learns that she tried to grow into someone who may never have existed and accidentally succeeded. Will Toko learn to accept being praised for not being Mio? And that hit me because it's even sadder knowing that Toko, you know, out of a sense of overwhelming guilt over her sister's death, tried to imitate all of these things that she thought Mio was, which turned out in the end to not be who Mio really was, but then unknowingly became the one thing that she wasn't setting out to emulate. You know, this person who's able to manipulate people and get them to do what she wants. Toko's identity crisis was probably made worse by the fact that it's clear, at least to me, that her family never properly grieved together over Mio's death. So when Toko's dad told her that she doesn't have to force herself to do the play, I think he meant well, but there's just so much left unsaid and unresolved between them that anything really could be taken the wrong way. Toko might have taken it as a jab at how she's failed to become the replacement that they needed, that even her attempt to embody Mio through the play isn't convincing, as if he was saying, "You're not good enough to honor your sister's memory, so don't even try." Even worse, Toko may have interpreted it as her parents thinking that all of her efforts to become the daughter that they have lost were wasted and are unwanted. That would mean not only has she lost her own identity for nothing, but she's been also actively disappointing them while thinking that she was helping. So this lack of functional communication between Toko and her parents means that none of those fears or misconceptions or misinterpretations can be addressed. Even if her dad was genuinely just trying to take pressure off Toko, it instead became another source of stress to her because she can't know his true meaning. And on the flip side, he can't understand the complex web of guilt and identity crisis and love that drives her actions. It reminded me of an earlier episode where we saw Toko's either parents or relatives telling her that she should live a good life in honor of Mio. In their minds, they may have been trying to encourage Toko to live fully and to pursue her own dreams and happiness as a tribute to the sister who no longer could. You know, something more positive along the lines of like, don't let grief consume you. Live the kind of life that would make Mio proud. But a kid who is grieving could easily misinterpret that in terrible ways. And she did. You know, Toko seems to have heard it as an instruction to literally become Mio, to fill the void left by her sister's absence. Go live a good life could have been twisted to sound like, in Toko's mind, live the life that Mio would have lived, especially if Toko was already struggling with feelings of inadequacy compared to her seemingly perfect sister. And that is why therapy is so important. This pattern of misinterpretation isn't limited to Toko's family dynamics. It also extends to her romantic relationship too, where her feelings of inadequacy and worthlessness color every single interaction. She continues to assume that Yuu doesn't really care about her, that she's not really invested in the relationship. So she's either being intentionally wrong about Yuu's intention or is just really bad at reading her. And I'm inclined to think that it's a bit of both. If Toko believes that she's fundamentally flawed or unworthy of love, it is safer to assume that Yuu doesn't really care because then she won't be hurt when Yuu eventually leaves or rejects her. There might also be an element of guilt. You know, since Toko believes that she's essentially lying about who she is or not being her true self, even in front of Yuu, she may feel that any affection directed towards her from Yuu is also built on false premises. So Toko might also want to believe that Yuu doesn't care as a way to alleviate her guilt about deceiving someone she supposedly loves. Either way you cut it, it's very unhealthy because she's essentially rejecting Yuu before you can reject her. Meanwhile, Yuu continues to be caught in this impossible situation where she's desperately in love with someone who keeps telling her not to fall in love with him. It's a little bit too late for that. She can't even verbalize what she wants for fear of immediately losing Toko. And she even had to agonize over what clothes to wear so she doesn't end up sending the wrong signal. That scene where they were walking home together after the study camp was also unexpectedly significant because of the fact that nothing happened. So the train signals blared, the colors faded into that romantic glow, and normally something pivotal follows. Toko kisses you, or they have some sort of relationship breakthrough. Instead, nothing happens. And that was precisely when you realized that they're at an impasse, that their relationship has stagnated, which is why you was so insistent on Toko going over to her place, because hasn't she done everything that Toko asked her to? Like, can't they still keep that special thing that they have going between them? And they do kind of end up taking their relationship further because Toko does open up about what happened with Ichigaya, but these moments feel less like natural progression now and more like you grasping for proof that their connection is genuine and that it can grow and that it's not just stuck. And sure enough, like despite all these revelations and emotional moments, we end with Toko still clinging to the need to be a fixed identity. And she also reinforces her own self-hatred by continuing to tell you not to fall in love with her. I can't be in love with someone who likes the things I hate, right? Is such a messed up piece of logic. And the irony cuts deeper than Toko realizes, I think. She demands the right to love you while simultaneously hating herself. But she also denies you that same right in return. Because if Toko truly believed her own logic, you could say the exact same thing about her, since Yu clearly loves what Toko despises about herself. I mean, she loves Toko, full stop. Enter Natsuki, Yu's old middle school friend who represents everything that Toko isn't. And I thought her inclusion in the story was a great addition in terms of being a stark contrast to Toko and like a what could have been. Where Toko makes demands without considering Yu's feelings, Natsuki selflessly gave Yu space to choose her own path. She was clearly interested in Yu and wanted to spend more time with her, but didn't ask her to follow her to high school for softball because she knew that Yu would just do it, even if it wasn't really what she wanted. Natsuki's very healthy approach to relationships was like almost jarring in the context of this show. She cares about you, but also like respects her autonomy. It's very different to Toko's possessive, controlling behavior. Natsuki's presence reminded me that if this was a typical romance show, we would be hard shipping Yu and Toko. But I think what makes Bloom Into You different from a lot of other romance shows is how the central tension isn't really, oh, will they or won't they? It's more, can these people become healthy enough to actually have a real relationship? And I think that's really cool. The solution that Yu proposes to help Toko stop hating herself, basically changing the ending of the play, was, I think, kind of brilliant in its simplicity. Instead of the main character choosing one version of herself to be based on the past, she should make the decision based on what she learns during her time in the hospital. It's all about embracing the present moment and also the process of self-discovery rather than being trapped by others' perceptions and this idea that you just have to be one version of yourself. It was this great indirect way for you to challenge Toko's entire worldview. She's saying essentially, you don't have to be tied to the past. You don't just have to choose one version of yourself. You can be who you are right now in this moment. And that makes a lot of sense. None of us, Toko included, are tied to our past. We exist right here, right now. Every second is a chance to be someone new, to make different choices, to grow beyond who we were yesterday or even in like the last second. The past, it shapes us for sure, but it doesn't have to imprison us. And there's something freeing about recognizing that the person you are today and in the moment right now is just as valid as any other version of yourself that existed before. I also loved how you acknowledged the complexity of her motivations. Her desire to help Toko could kind of be seen as selfish. She wants Toko to stop hating herself, partly because it would make her life easier and so that she can keep exploring being in a romantic relationship with Toko. But it is also, I think, genuinely compassionate. She saw someone struggling and she really wants to help. Just like Toko doesn't have to be just one version of herself, Yu's desires don't have to be locked down into a box or something very simple. Our motivations and our desires are just as complex as we are, and that's okay. Let's also appreciate like the lighter parts in these episodes. I thought it was so cute that they included a collective gay panic scene, Sayaka getting all flustered because she's about to be naked in the bath with Toko, you just pretending to be like a totally cool cucumber while internally freaking out the whole time, and Toko just trying really not to be a perv. It was perfect. Also, I loved the scene where Dojima was being an idiot and asked Hakazaki what her relationship with Ichigaya was, and you could visibly hear and see Sayaka's smile when she shot him down. I think all of these little details make this world feel just very relatable and very lived in. We have time for one last Sayaka side note. I loved that she got to play the role of Toko's lover in the play because one, she kind of deserves it, and two, it gave us Maki's meme face. I do think Sayaka is one of the more emotionally intelligent characters on the show, so it made sense that she was the first one to see through Toko's facade, and all credit to her for like really digging Toko until she got at the truth, because Toko definitely wasn't going to offer it voluntarily. Sayaka doesn't just offer empty comfort, and she does understand that this rough patch might actually be good for Toko in the end. Though I have to say, her dismissiveness of Yu's concern for Toko did feel a little bit mean girly. But I guess, look, even the most emotionally mature people struggle with jealousy, and Sayaka is no exception. As we head into this last episode, the question is, will Toko break free from her self-destructive cycle? And maybe a secondary question is, will you finally find the courage to be honest about her feelings to her? I think to have a satisfactory conclusion to Toko's crisis, there has to be several things that she learns. The biggest shift would be moving away from trying to reconstruct herself based only on the past, either on like her idealized version of Mio or others' perceptions of her, and instead embrace who she is in the present. Part of that will be learning to accept that she doesn't have to pick one true version of herself, as we talked about. Another thing would be seeing Toko develop a sense of self that isn't dependent on external sources of validation, like what others think of her, what she thinks Mio would be like, what her parents want. She needs to develop like her own internal compass for who she wants to be. Third thing, hopefully she can properly grieve Mio's death, like actually process the loss of her sister as her own separate person instead of trying to become her replacement. And maybe most importantly, she needs to stop hating herself. I think that that is something we all hopefully learn as we grow into adults. Just having that compassion and grace for ourselves, flaws and all. Bloom Into You, episode 13 and the finale of this season. Here we go. You guys ready? In 3, 2, 1, play. Oh, are they at her sister's grave? Seven seas. Broken wings? That's a good question. Like, what's in store for Toko after this? You know, and the answer is like nothing if she can't get out of that cycle of blaming herself for her sister's death and her obligation to replace her. I wonder if Mia thinks like Yu is just playing around, you know? Because she did say in front of her last time, like, oh, it's not a big deal, like talking about Toko. But she does care so much. The classic writer's dilemma, where it's like you change one thing and then you have to change 50 billion other things. uh, Mia always has this like, I got the tea kind of look. Hmm. Oh, what? Where are you now? Man, it's really interesting watching you just try her hardest to help Sokka, but not be able to do it in the most direct of ways. Kind of just have to find these workarounds. Mia just like getting all like front row seats to all this drama unfolding. Hmm? Oh, like a love rival. Oh, maybe he had a thing for Hakazaki when they're in school together. It's probably somewhere like in a manga. Saiga's doing a good job of being there for Toko. Like she's being brave enough to ask these sorts of questions, but not pushing too hard either. She's doing the best she can. I also love how there's never anyone else in this cafe. Yeah. Oh, Sayaka? If we ever get a season 2, I would love it to be focused on Sayaka. Man. I wonder if it reminds her. Like, what does the incense remind her of? Death of her sister. A funeral. Oh my god. Oh my god. Ah, they knew what they were doing there. So sad. You know she's thinking about it. Thank God for you as well. Did she accidentally press that? Yay! More scenes with these two. Oh, compromise. See, a real relationship. Mm. Ah, I love seeing me in a show. You rarely see pans or buys in shows. That was so cute. And that was so real too. Uh I loved that they broached that, even if it was like very quick, you know. Like when you're a pan or a buy, it's like people do ask you, so which way do you swing more, you know? But then when you meet your person, it doesn't matter. Like regardless of your past preferences or whatever, statistical distribution, that person is that person and that's it for you. That was sweet. A date. I feel like this episode is already slightly lighter. Because she can see through them. Mm. I love seeing how passionate Yu is about sea animals. It's rare. He's probably been to this aquarium like 100 times. Okay, or maybe not. Mm. This is where the dolphins splashy. Why is she. Wait, what? Whoa. Okay, this is so different to the scene with like the broken wings floating down a river. Like, also, I love the connection to like the underwater imagery. It's like they're seeing everything clearly, even though it's underwater. Kind of like how Yu's come to see her own feelings quite clearly. Okay, this is great. Just kind of envisioning the future, which is always a good sign. It's hard to tell with you. I think she's just not sure. Yeah, if what she's feeling for Toko is love, even though it probably is. Hmm. Oh, so like a point of difference. Yeah, all of that. Hmm. I mean, I don't know how reassuring that is for you. Like, yes. You just casually upending Toko's whole worldview. I think that's good. That was good. She still has a long way to go. Make no mistake, but mm, these two crazy kids. This is like Yu's therapy session for Toko. Interesting shot on the ringed off section. Oh, using Yu's part, like the nurse, to tell her that she's okay just being who she is now. That's not true though. She's creating memories every second she's alive. Wow, that composition was interesting. Oh, that was an interesting reverse. Like it's Toko who can't reach you now. Eh? That's no! That can't be it. They are so cute together. Stingray. They're underwater, but they're not drowning either. They're together and they're holding hands and they can see everything so clearly despite the fact that they're underwater. Isn't that just like the perfect metaphor for how you may not have figured everything out yet right now, but you can still exist and be, content and satisfied and kind of have a vision for yourself for the future, despite not having 100% certainty and not really knowing who you are exactly. Ah, that's so perfect. Why? Why is this so perfect? Oh, use wish that she never wrote down. This is sort of like they're walking towards the light at the end of the tunnel. They're still walking through the tunnel. Koyomi. Ooh. Sayaka. I love glasses, Sayaka. What did she just finish reading? Uh, okay, someone who knows Japanese probably could read a lot more nuance into that title. It's interesting that we're being put in their shoes a lot this episode, like seeing things from their perspective. Ah, do it, do it. Okay, it's okay. She did it. We need to change trains now. Like, you are going on a whole new track. That was so. Okay. I know that the show doesn't end like where the manga ends, and they're likely not going to make another season, which is really sad. But I felt that they ended that season in the best possible way on a really hopeful note. Okay, like genuinely, for a mid story ending, I think they gave us the best payoff that they could have. Sure, you can't be completely open about her feelings to Toko, and Toko is still very much in the process of figuring out who she is and how to forgive herself. But knowing that these characters and their relationship is still a work in progress, the fact that there are clear signs that there will be progress means that, to me at least, not having all the answers is okay. You know, it's about the journey. And man, have we been on a journey. Think about where we started in just this episode versus where we ended up. At the start, Toko was paralyzed by fear about the future, and you could just see that the uncertainty was eating away at her about, you know, what she'd do and be after the play finished. But by the end, we saw her and Yuu just enjoying each other's company, and they were laughing and getting splashed by dolphins, and they were completely at ease. And there was this moment also where Toko admitted that there is at least one part of her that she feels or she knows is real, which is the part that loves Yuu. And again, that is not an ideal resolution, but it is some progress. And it definitely felt more authentic than if they tried to wrap everything up with like a little bow tie. Same thing when they were rehearsing the play at the Aquarium. Like they were working through this critical moment where Toko was struggling with what she should do about not having any memories of her own. And it really wasn't about the play anymore. It was about Toko being weighed down by her identity crisis. For a moment, neither of them had an answer. There was this very like heavy silence, and you could see both of them grappling with this fundamental problem. And then they were interrupted by the announcer about the Penguin Show starting, and Yuu started to walk over. And this time it was Toko who felt like she was losing her, unable to reach her through the water. But then Yuu turned back and said the thing that always makes Toko blush. And just like that, you know, it was simple, genuine, and present. And the relief on Toko's face was everything. You could literally see her exhale, and it was like she could breathe again. And it wasn't that you had given her some profound, deep solution to her identity crisis or any of that. You know, instead, you just reminded her of something much simpler, but just as important. And that is, she doesn't have to have all the answers right now. You know, she has you, and that's enough for now. Don't get me wrong, it's not exactly healthy for you to have that kind of pressure put on her, like to be someone's only anchor like that. Ideally, Toko keeps working on herself and realizes that all of the other parts of herself are just as genuine as the part that loves you. But you know what? It was, again, something. It was a starting point. Sometimes progress is about finding something solid to stand on or to hold on to while you figure out the rest, which is why I thought this ending worked. Like what we saw is two people who care about each other choosing to move forward together, even though the path isn't completely clear yet, which is, again, so much more realistic. Real relationships aren't about finding someone who completes you, they're about finding someone who can support you while you complete yourself. Let's talk about symbolism. They absolutely loaded this episode with all of the symbolic imagery of the whole season, and I thought it worked well. The fact that their date took place at the aquarium with lots of underwater scenes, they are literally submerged, which has in the past been used as a way to express Yu's inability to understand love or to connect with others on that level. But now both Yu and Toko can see each other clearly and they're not exactly drowning. I think what made this symbolism even more powerful was again like the contrast with the start of the episode. When Toko and her family visited her sister's grave, there was a moment where the broken wings of, I think, a butterfly was washed down the river. This very stark imagery to emphasize the loss and the brokenness inside Toko, and also her helplessness at being carried down a path she felt like she had no choice in. But by the end, instead of being helplessly carried along by currents, Toka and Yu have a sense of clarity and connection, even underwater. And that's Toko's emotional journey in a nutshell, basically told through water metaphors, like from being swept away by grief and confusion and emptiness to actively choosing to explore the depths of her emotions and her sense of self and self-worth with someone that she trusts and that she loves. And then there was that train scene at the end, like they literally changed trains, which is like a not so subtle way to show that Toko with Yu is choosing a different path forward. And again, the power of that moment came from the contrast with what we saw before. So earlier we had that very troubling scene where Toko was standing alone on the platform and there was a very real sense that she might be contemplating jumping onto the tracks. But here, Yu was right there with Toko after they'd had this wonderful date, and when it was time to change trains, Toko had Yu to change with her. So to me, that meant, Toko is not alone with her dark thoughts anymore. She is with someone who cares about her, and is helping her make a conscious choice to move forward in a more positive direction and like a healthier understanding of herself. It was symbolic of her choosing her path and changing tracks rather than being overwhelmed by it. One thing I loved, especially in this finale, was how Yu consistently challenged Toko's thinking. She just kept chipping away at Toko's rigid ideas of having a static identity or believing that she was somehow empty or fake because she didn't have her own memories separate from her sister's influence. Yu basically kept saying it is okay to have contradictory parts of yourself. Like it is okay to be complex. She wasn't preachy about it. She was just herself, like being genuine and showing Toko through her actions that you don't have to have everything figured out to be worth loving. And in fact, the title that she ended up with for the play, One of You, was another way that Yu indirectly told Toko that it's healthy to acknowledge that all of the different aspects of you are part of who you are. Instead of asking, oh, which is the real me? Like the me in front of my parents or in front of my friends or the me that I have in my head, like you can say they are all me and that's okay. The title encompasses the very uplifting thesis statement of Bloom Into You, which is that all of us should accept ourselves and the complexity of our human identity. I also want to give a shout out to Sayaka for this moment when Toko was still agonizing over whether her memories of her sister were even real. And Sayaka told her, I have no doubt that what you knew was one part of the real her. She didn't dismiss Toko's concerns or, on the other extreme, tell her that, oh, your memories are perfect representations of who Mia was, don't worry. Instead, she just validated that the sister Toko knew and loved was real, even if it wasn't the complete picture. It was one facet of a complex person, and that facet was just as genuine as any other part of Mio. And I guess that insight parallels what Yu has been trying to tell Toko about herself. Just like Toko doesn't have to be one single unchanging thing, Mio too had very different sides to her personality. And so the version of herself that Toko has been trying to become in honor of her sister, that's real. The parts of herself that are different from Mio, those are real too. They're all Toko. Speaking of amazing supporting characters, this conversation between Mia and Riko about like preferences and attraction was great. Like I loved the dramatic low piano note that goes boom, when Mia freaked out over Riko saying she doesn't really have a special preference for women. But of course, she goes on to reassure her that Mia is different. You know, Mia is the exception. I liked this a lot because it felt like an honest representation for bi and pan people. Like, too often we get these stories where characters have to fit into neat categories or have some big revelation about their sexuality, but Riko's response here felt so real. She wasn't dismissing her past attractions, and she's just saying that for her, it's about the person, not the gender. Actually, generally, the way that Bloom Into You handled sexuality and same-sex attraction was so refreshing, whether it was Mia and Riko, or Sayaka's past, or that triangle between Yuu, Sayaka, and Touko. It didn't make a huge deal out of it, but it also didn't brush it aside. It was just presented as this natural part of how real people experience attraction. And I really appreciated that the characters' experiences were consistently treated with respect and with nuance, even in these like sort of smaller side conversations. Thank you guys for watching Bloom Into You with me. It was a great experience to watch something with such compelling character development and also very realistic relationship dynamics. At no point did I feel like it rushed through anything or ever took the easy way out. This finale had like everything I love about the series: the animation, the subtle emotional moments, and the way that it handles pretty heavy themes with a lot of care, and how it showed that sometimes the most profound changes happen gradually, just one small step at a time, which gives hope for us all mere mortals. Yeah, I'm genuinely going to miss the show and like the discussions we had. But in other news, because we finished Bloom Into You, there will be a short break between the next show that I'll start. And yeah, I guess I can tell you what it is. Like, we will be starting season 3 of Hibike after this, which I am pretty excited about. In the meantime, you can check out my other anime series that are on the main channel, or if you go to my Ko-fi page and become a member, there are a few anime movies there too. Thank you again, and we can keep the discussions going on in the comments. So yeah, take care, guys.